The train whistle echoed across the dusty plains of Colorado as Sarah Mitchell stepped onto the wooden platform of Cedar Creek Station. Her worn leather satchel contained everything she owned in the world: 2 dresses, a few personal items, and the crumpled letter that had brought her here. The letter was addressed to Thomas Henderson, a rancher seeking a wife through correspondence. Sarah had answered his advertisement in the Denver newspaper 3 months ago, and after exchanging several letters, they had agreed she would come to Cedar Creek to marry him. The small frontier town looked nothing like the bustling city of Denver she had left behind. Wooden buildings lined the main street, their paint faded by the harsh mountain sun. A few horses stood tied to hitching posts, and several men in dusty clothes watched her with curious eyes. Sarah smoothed her blue traveling dress and looked around for Thomas Henderson. She had never seen his photograph, but his letters described him as a tall man with brown hair who would be waiting for her at the station. A man approached her, and Sarah's heart quickened. He was indeed tall, with brown hair, though streaked with gray at the temples. His clothes were clean but simple: denim trousers, a white cotton shirt, and worn leather boots. He removed his hat as he neared her, revealing kind eyes that crinkled at the corners. "Miss Sarah Mitchell?" he asked in a deep, gentle voice. "Yes, that's me," Sarah replied, feeling suddenly nervous. "Are you Thomas Henderson?" The man paused for a moment, then shook his head. "No, miss. I'm James Parker. Thomas Henderson asked me to meet you because he had some urgent business to attend to. He'll be back tomorrow. He wanted me to make sure you were comfortable until then." Sarah felt a wave of disappointment wash over her. She had traveled for 3 days to meet the man she was supposed to marry, and he wasn't even there to greet her. "I see," she said, trying to hide her feelings. "That's very kind of you, Mr. Parker." James picked up her satchel and gestured toward the main street. "The hotel isn't fancy, but it's clean and safe. Mrs. Wilson, who runs it, makes the best apple pie in 3 counties. He smiled, and Sarah noticed how it transformed his weathered face. "Don't worry about Mr. Henderson's absence. He's a good man, just very dedicated to his work." As they walked through town, James pointed out the various businesses: the general store, the blacksmith shop, the church, and the schoolhouse. "It's not much compared to city life," he said, "but it's a good place to raise a family. The people here look out for each other." Sarah nodded, though she couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. In his letters, Thomas had seemed eager to meet her and start their life together. Why would he leave town just before her arrival? She pushed these thoughts aside as they reached the hotel. A 2-story building with a wide front porch. Mrs. Wilson, a plump woman with graying hair, greeted them warmly. "You must be the bride-to-be," she said with a smile. "Welcome to Cedar Creek, dear. James, you make sure she gets settled properly?" "Yes, ma'am," James replied. He carried Sarah's bag up to a small but tidy room on the 2nd floor. "I'll be back in the morning to check on you," he said. "If you need anything before then, just ask Mrs. Wilson." That evening, Sarah sat by her window looking out at the town. The sun was setting behind the mountains, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. She thought about her decision to come here. After her parents died in a fever epidemic, she had worked as a seamstress in Denver, barely earning enough to survive. The idea of marriage to a rancher had seemed like a chance for a better life, even if it meant marrying a stranger. The next morning, James arrived as promised, but his expression was troubled. "Miss Mitchell," he said, removing his hat, "I'm afraid I have some difficult news. Thomas Henderson left town yesterday morning. He won't be coming back." Sarah felt the color drain from her face. "What do you mean he won't be coming back?" "We had an agreement. I've traveled all this way." James looked uncomfortable. It seems he had second thoughts about marriage. He left a message saying he was sorry, but he realized he wasn't ready for such a commitment. He took a job with a cattle drive heading to Wyoming. Sarah sank into a chair in the hotel lobby, feeling as though the floor had dropped out from under her. She was stranded in a strange town with barely enough money for a return train ticket. "What am I supposed to do now?" She whispered. Mrs. Wilson, who had been listening from behind the front desk, came over and patted Sarah's shoulder. "Don't you worry, dear. We'll figure something out. This town takes care of its own, and you're one of us now." James knelt beside Sarah's chair. "Miss Mitchell, I know this isn't what you planned, but maybe it's for the best. Thomas Henderson was always a restless man, never satisfied with staying in one place. You deserve better than that. Sarah looked up at him through her tears. There was something in his eyes, a kindness and steadiness that she hadn't noticed before. But what will I do? I have no family, no place to go back to. You could stay here, James said quietly. The schoolteacher is leaving next month to get married. The town needs someone educated to take her place. I heard you mention in your letters that you can read and write well. Sarah considered this. Teaching wasn't what she had planned, but it would give her a way to support herself. I suppose I could try, she said. Mrs. Wilson clapped her hands together. That's wonderful. And you can stay here as long as you need. We'll work out the details later. As the day wore on, Sarah began to feel a glimmer of hope. Maybe this unexpected turn of events was actually a blessing in disguise. She had escaped a marriage to a man who clearly wasn't committed to their future together. And there was something about James Parker's quiet strength that made her feel safe in this unfamiliar place. That evening, as she sat on the hotel porch watching the sunset, James approached with a cup of coffee. I thought you might like this, he said, settling into the chair beside her. Thank you, Sarah said, accepting the warm cup gratefully. Mr. Parker, why are you being so kind to me? You barely know me. James was quiet for a moment. I suppose because I know what it's like to be alone in the world, he said finally. And because I can see that you're a good person who doesn't deserve to be treated badly. 3 weeks had passed since Sarah's arrival in Cedar Creek, and she was beginning to settle into her new life as the town's schoolteacher. The small schoolhouse sat at the edge of town, surrounded by tall pine trees that provided shade during the hot afternoons. 23 children of various ages attended her classes, from 6-year-old Emma Watson to 15-year-old Marcus Sullivan, whose family owned the general store. Sarah discovered she had a natural talent for teaching. She made lessons interesting by incorporating stories and games, and even the older boys who had been skeptical of having a woman teacher began to respect her. The children were eager to learn, hungry for knowledge that would help them succeed in a world that was rapidly changing. James Parker had become a regular visitor to the schoolhouse. At first, he claimed he was just checking to make sure she had everything she needed. Then he began bringing small gifts, a slate board he had repaired, books he had ordered from Denver, wildflowers he had picked on his way to town. Sarah looked forward to his visits more than she cared to admit. One afternoon, as Sarah was cleaning the schoolhouse after dismissing her students, she heard a commotion outside. Through the window, she saw a small crowd gathered around something near the fence. She hurried outside and gasped when she saw what had captured everyone's attention. A little girl, more than 5 years old, stood among the adults. Her clothes were dirty and torn, her dark hair tangled and unwashed. She clutched a raggedy cloth doll and stared at the ground, refusing to meet anyone's eyes. The child was clearly Native American, with beautiful dark skin and high cheekbones. Where did she come from? Mrs. Wilson asked, her voice full of concern. Found her wandering near Miller's Creek, said Deputy Sheriff Collins. She won't say a word, just keeps holding on to that doll. Sarah knelt down in front of the child, speaking softly. Hello, sweetheart. What's your name? The little girl looked up briefly, her dark eyes filled with fear and sadness, but remained silent. James arrived just then, having heard about the situation from someone in town. He took one look at the child and his expression softened. She's probably lost or separated from her family, he said. The Ute tribe has been moving through this area lately, heading to their winter grounds. What do we do with her? Deputy Collins asked. Can't just leave her wandering around. She needs food and a warm place to sleep, Sarah said firmly. Look at her. She's exhausted and scared. She held out her hand to the child. Would you like to come with me? I have food and a safe place to stay. The little girl hesitated, then slowly reached out and took Sarah's hand. Her small fingers were cold and trembling. Mrs. Wilson nodded approvingly. You can bring her to the hotel. I'll prepare a room and some food. That evening, Sarah sat beside the child as she ate soup and bread hungrily. The girl had allowed Sarah to help her wash and had put on a clean dress that Mrs. Wilson had found. Her hair, now clean and brushed, fell in shiny waves past her shoulders. You're very pretty, Sarah said gently. I wish I knew your name, she pointed to herself. Sarah, my name is Sarah. Then she pointed to the child. What's your name? The little girl finished her soup and looked at Sarah with those serious dark eyes. Then, so quietly Sarah almost missed it, she whispered, Luna. Sarah's heart lifted. Luna, that's a beautiful name. It means moon, doesn't it? The child nodded slightly. Over the next few days, Luna began to trust Sarah more. She followed her to the schoolhouse each morning and sat quietly in the corner. Watching the older children learn their letters and numbers, she rarely spoke. But Sarah noticed she was absorbing everything that happened around her. James visited more frequently now. Bringing small toys and treats for Luna, the child seemed to respond to his gentle manner. And Sarah often found them sitting together on the schoolhouse steps while Luna played with the wooden horse he had carved for her. She's a bright little thing. James observed one afternoon as they watched Luna carefully copying letters on a slate. Look how quickly she's learning. Sarah nodded. She understands much more than she lets on. I think she's just scared to speak too much. She's probably been through something terrible. The townspeople had mixed reactions to Luna's presence. Some, like Mrs. Wilson and the schoolchildren, accepted her warmly. Others whispered behind closed doors about the wisdom of keeping an Indian child in town. Sarah tried not to let their words affect her, but she worried about what would happen to Luna in the long term. One evening, as Sarah was helping Luna get ready for bed, the child finally spoke more than a few words. My mama gone, she said in broken English, her eyes filling with tears. Bad men came. Mama tell Luna run and hide. Sarah's heart broke as she held the trembling child. I'm so sorry, Luna. You're safe now. I won't let anything bad happen to you. You my mama now? Luna asked, looking up at Sarah with hope and fear mixed in her dark eyes. Sarah felt tears welling up in her own eyes. If you want me to be, sweetheart, I would be honored to be your mama. From that night on, the bond between Sarah and Luna grew stronger. Sarah began to realize that perhaps her misdelivered mail-order bride arrangement had led her to something much more important than marriage to a stranger. She had found a child who needed her, and in caring for Luna, she had discovered a love deeper than anything she had imagined. James watched their relationship develop with obvious admiration. You're wonderful with her, he told Sarah one day, as they watched Luna play with the other children during recess. She's lucky to have found you. I think I'm the lucky one, Sarah replied. She's brought so much joy into my life. What will you do if her tribe comes looking for her? James asked gently. Sarah had been wondering the same thing. I suppose I'll have to let her go if that's what's best for her. But until then, I'll give her all the love and care I can. As autumn deepened into winter, no word came about Luna's family. The child continued to thrive under Sarah's care, learning to read and write with remarkable speed. She had begun to laugh and play like other children her age, but she still had nightmares sometimes about the day her mother disappeared. Sarah found herself falling into a comfortable routine. During the day, she taught school with Luna by her side. In the evenings, they would read together or work on Luna's lessons. James often joined them for dinner, and Sarah began to look forward to these quiet domestic moments more than she had ever expected. The other children in school had completely accepted Luna as one of their own. They helped her with difficult words and included her in their games. Sarah was proud of how the young people of Cedar Creek had shown such kindness and acceptance. But not everyone in town was happy about the situation. Sarah began to notice suspicious looks and whispered conversations that stopped when she approached. She tried to ignore them, but she could sense that some people were growing uncomfortable with a white woman raising an Indian child. Winter arrived early that year, blanketing Cedar Creek in a thick layer of snow by late November. The schoolhouse required constant attention to keep the fire burning, and Sarah often found herself arriving early to warm the building before the children came for their lessons. Luna helped by carrying small pieces of kindling and had learned to bank the fire properly when they left each. Evening, the tension in town had been growing steadily. Sarah noticed it in the way some parents picked up their children from school without the usual friendly conversation, and in how certain shopkeepers seemed less welcoming when she visited the general store. The problem came to a head on a cold December morning when Mayor Harrison visited the schoolhouse. Mayor Harrison was a portly man, with a gray mustache, who owned the largest ranch in the area. He removed his hat as he entered, but his expression remained stern. "Miss Mitchell, I need to speak with you about a serious matter." Sarah was helping young Billy Thompson with his arithmetic, while Luna sat nearby practicing her letters. Of course, Mayor Harrison. "Children, please continue working quietly." The mayor glanced at Luna with obvious disapproval. "Some concerned citizens have come to me about your ... arrangement ... with this Indian child. They feel it sets a dangerous precedent, and they're worried about the influence she might have on their own children." Sarah Gail felt her temper rising, but kept her voice calm. "Luna is a 5-year-old child who has suffered a terrible loss. She's bright, well-behaved, and eager to learn. I fail to see how her presence could be anything but positive for this community." "That's not the point," Mayor Harrison replied. "The point is that she doesn't belong here. Her people have their own ways, and mixing the races leads to problems. Some families are considering removing their children from school if this situation continues." Luna stopped writing and was watching the conversation with worried eyes. Sarah moved slightly to position herself between the child and the mayor. "Are you telling me to abandon a child who has no one else?" "I'm telling you to think about what's best for this town and your position as school teacher," the mayor said firmly. "There are places for her kind missions and such. She'd be with other Indian children there." "Her kind?" Sarah's voice rose despite her efforts to stay calm. "She's a human being, Mayor Harrison. A child who deserves love and education just like any other child in this town." The older students had stopped their work and were listening intently. Marcus Sullivan, the 15-year-old whose family owned the general store, stood up from his desk. "Mayor Harrison, Sir, Luna helps me with my reading sometimes. She's real smart and kind to everyone. Why would anyone want to send her away?" "Sit down, boy. This is adult business," the mayor snapped. Emma Watson, only 6 years old, raised her small hand. "Luna shared her lunch with me when I forgot mine. She's my friend." Other children began speaking up, defending Luna and expressing confusion about why anyone would want her to leave. Sarah felt a surge of pride in her students, but also concern about putting them in the middle of this conflict. "Children, please return to your lessons," Sarah said gently. Then she faced the mayor again. "As you can see, the children have no problem with Luna. Perhaps the adults in this town could learn something from their example." Mayor Harrison's face reddened. "Miss Mitchell, you're here on the town's goodwill. Don't forget that your position depends on community support. I suggest you think carefully about where your loyalties lie." After the mayor left, Sarah tried to continue the school day normally, but she could see that Luna had been deeply affected by the conversation. The child was unusually quiet and kept glancing at the door as if expecting someone to come and take her away. That evening, James found Sarah sitting on the hotel porch despite the cold, with Luna curled up beside her under a heavy blanket. "I heard about Harrison's visit," he said, settling into a nearby chair. "I'm sorry you had to deal with that." "I won't give her up, James," Sarah said firmly. "I don't care what threats they make." James reached over and gently touched Luna's sleeping head. "I wouldn't expect you to. You're not the type to abandon someone you love." He paused. "But you should know that Harrison isn't the only one with strong opinions. There are others who support what you're doing, including some influential people in town." "Like who?" Sarah asked hopefully. "Doc Peterson thinks you're doing a fine job with her. Says she's healthier and happier than most children he sees. Mrs. Wilson is firmly on your side, and she has considerable influence with the other women in town. And Pastor Williams gave a sermon last Sunday about Christian charity and caring for orphans." Sarah felt some of her tension ease. "I didn't realize there were people speaking up for us." "There are more supporters than you know," James assured her. "But there are also people who are genuinely concerned about the situation, even if they're going about expressing it in the wrong way." Over the next few days, the divide in the community became more apparent. Some families made a point of being extra friendly to both Sarah and Luna, while others avoided them entirely. The children remained largely unaffected by their parents' concerns, continuing to treat Luna as one of their own. The crisis deepened when a letter arrived from the territorial government in Denver. Someone had written to complain about a white woman raising an Indian child, claiming it was improper and potentially dangerous. The letter requested a full report on the situation and warned that Sarah's teaching certificate could be reviewed if the matter wasn't handled. Appropriately, Sarah read the letter with shaking hands as James stood beside her in the schoolhouse. "They could take away my position," she whispered. "And if I'm not the teacher, I won't have any income to support Luna." "We'll figure something out," James said firmly. "You're not alone in this, Sarah." That weekend, something unexpected happened that would change everything. A traveling merchant named Peter Kohler arrived in town with his wagon full of goods. Kohler was known for his honest dealings and his ability to get news from across the territory. He set up his temporary shop in front of the general store and began displaying his wares. When Kohler saw Luna helping Sarah carry supplies from the general store, his weathered face showed recognition. He approached them carefully, speaking in halting English mixed with what Sarah realized was a Native American language. Luna's eyes widened with surprise and hope. She responded hesitantly in the same language, and soon she and Kohler were having an animated conversation while Sarah watched anxiously. "This little one," Kohler said finally to Sarah. "She is from the band of Chief Running Bear. They camped near my trading post 6 months ago. There was sickness, many died, including her mother. The survivors moved south to join other family groups." Sarah's heart sank. "Are they looking for her?" Kohler shook his head sadly. "The band scattered. Chief Running Bear died in the sickness too. Her grandmother was caring for her, but she is old and weak. Last I heard, she was with a group heading to the reservation in Utah." Sarah knelt down beside Luna, who had tears streaming down her face. "What did he tell you, sweetheart?" "Grandmama's sick," Luna whispered. "My people all gone different places. He says maybe I stay here if I want." Kohler nodded to Sarah. "The old ways are ending. This child has chance for good life here if you want to keep her. Her grandmother would be happy knowing she is safe and learning white man's ways. We'll help her survive in changing world." Sarah hugged Luna close, feeling a mixture of grief and relief. The child truly had no family left to claim her. But the news also meant she had lost even more than Sarah had realized. "Would you like to stay with me forever?" Sarah asked gently. "To be my daughter in every way?" Luna nodded against Sarah's shoulder. "You my real mama now," she whispered. "I want to stay with you always." The news from Peter Kohler about Luna's family situation spread quickly through Cedar Creek. Sarah hoped it would settle the controversy once and for all. But instead, it seemed to make some people more determined than ever to remove the child from town. If Luna truly had no family to reclaim her, they argued, then it was even more important to send her to a proper institution where she could be with other Indian children. The debate reached its peak during the monthly town meeting in early January. The entire community gathered in the church, with Mayor Harrison presiding over what turned into a heated discussion about Luna's future. Sarah sat in the front row with Luna beside her, while James had positioned himself nearby, ready to offer support. "The way I see it," said Mr. Peterson, the banker, "we have a responsibility to think about what's best for everyone involved. The child needs to be with her own kind, and Miss Mitchell needs to focus on teaching our children without distractions." Mrs. Sullivan from the general store stood up. "I disagree completely. Luna is a sweet, intelligent child who has brought nothing but good to our school. My Marcus speaks very highly of her, and he's not easily impressed." "That's not the point," interrupted Jeremiah Walsh, who owned a small ranch outside town. "We're talking about the future of our community. What happens when other tribes here were taking in their children? We could have dozens of them showing up at our doorstep." Pastor Williams rose from his seat. "Mr. Walsh, I believe you're missing the Christian message here. We are called to care for orphans and widows. This child came to us in need, and Miss Mitchell answered that call with love and dedication." "Preacher's right," called out old Tom Mitchell, who, despite sharing Sarah's last name, was no relation. "I've watched that little girl for months now. She's polite, well-behaved, and smart as a whip. Any community would be lucky to have her. The argument continued for over an hour, with the town clearly divided. Sarah listened to people debate Luna's fate as if the child weren't sitting right there understanding every word. She could feel Luna trembling beside her and reached over to take the small hand in hers. Finally, Mayor Harrison called for order. "We need to make a decision tonight. I propose we take a vote. All in favor of Miss Mitchell keeping the child and continuing as our school teacher. Raise your hands." Sarah held her breath as hands slowly went up around the room. She tried to count them, but it was difficult to see everyone from her position. Then the mayor called for those opposed, and more hands rose into the air. "The count is close," Mayor Harrison announced. 22 in favor, 25 opposed. "The decision is made. Miss Mitchell, you'll need to make arrangements for the child within the next 2 weeks." Sarah felt as though she'd been struck by lightning. Luna looked up at her with confusion and fear. "Mama, what does that mean? Do I have to go away?" Before Sarah could answer, young Marcus Sullivan jumped to his feet. "This isn't fair. You didn't let the kids vote, and we're the ones who go to school with Luna every day. We should have a say too." "Sit down, son," Mayor Harrison said firmly. "Children don't vote in town matters, but we're the ones affected most," Marcus protested. "Luna is our classmate and our friend. We see her every day, and we know she belongs here." Other children began standing up throughout the church. Emma Watson, despite being only 6 years old, spoke up in her clear young voice. "Luna helped me learn my letters. She's really smart and kind. Why do grown-ups want to send away someone who's good?" Billy Thompson, normally shy, found his courage. "My PA says America is about giving everyone a chance. Luna should get a chance too. Soon." Nearly every school-aged child in the church was standing and speaking up for Luna. They talked about how she helped with lessons, shared her lunch with others, and never caused any trouble. They spoke about friendship and fairness with the simple honesty that only children possess. Sarah watched with amazement as these young people defended Luna with a passion that many adults lacked. Even teenagers who usually stayed quiet during adult discussions were speaking up, describing Luna's intelligence and kindness. The adults in the room began to shift uncomfortably as their own children challenged the decision they had just. Mrs. Patterson, whose 9-year-old daughter Jenny had been one of the most vocal defenders, looked troubled. "Maybe we should reconsider," she said hesitantly. "If our children feel so strongly about this, children don't understand the complexities involved." But his voice lacked its earlier conviction. James Parker stood up from his seat. "Mayor Harrison, if I may speak." When the mayor nodded reluctantly, James continued. "I've been watching this situation develop for months now. I've seen how Luna has thrived under Miss Mitchell's care, and I've seen how the children have accepted her completely. Isn't that what we really want? A community where people are judged by their character rather than their race?" "That's a fine sentiment," said Jeremiah Walsh, "but we have to be practical. What about when she gets older? What about marriage prospects? What kind of life can she really have here?" "The same kind of life any child can have if they're given love and education," James replied firmly. "She's 5 years old, Mr. Walsh. She deserves a chance to grow up and decide her own future." Dr. Peterson, who had been quiet throughout most of the meeting, finally spoke up. "I've examined Luna several times since she arrived in town. She's healthy, intelligent, and shows no signs of the trauma that might be expected from a child who has suffered such losses. That speaks very highly of Miss Mitchell's care. From a medical standpoint, removing her from a stable, loving home would be harmful." The room fell silent as people considered the doctor's words. Sarah could see doubt creeping into the faces of some who had voted against her. Then, Luna did something that surprised everyone. She stood up on her chair so she could see the whole room and spoke in her clear, young voice. "I know some people don't want me here because I look different," she said. Her words carefully pronounced as Sarah had taught her. "But I love this town. I love my school and my friends and my mama Sarah. I work very hard to be good and to learn everything I can. I want to grow up here and maybe be a teacher like Mama Sarah someday. Please don't make me go away from the only family I have." The sincerity in her voice and the mature way she expressed herself stunned the adults into silence. Here was a 5-year-old child pleading for her home with more dignity and eloquence than many grown people could muster. Mrs. Wilson stood up, tears in her eyes. "I move that we take another vote. After hearing from our children and from Luna herself, I think we need to reconsider our decision." "I second that motion," called out Pastor Williams immediately. Mayor Harrison looked around the room and saw nodding heads and shifting attitudes. "Very well. Let's vote again. All in favor of allowing Miss Mitchell to keep Luna and continue as our school teacher?" This time, Sarah could see the difference immediately. Many hands that had stayed down before now rose into the air. When the count was finished, the result was 31 in favor and only 16 opposed. "The motion carries," Mayor Harrison announced, and the room erupted in applause from the children and many adults. Sarah hugged Luna tightly as tears of relief streamed down her face. "We get to stay together, sweetheart. You're really my daughter now." James appeared beside them, his own eyes bright with emotion. "Congratulations," he said simply, but Sarah could hear the depth of feeling in his voice. Spring arrived in Cedar Creek with a burst of wildflowers covering the mountain meadows and the sound of rushing water as snow melted in the high country. Sarah felt as though she were seeing the world with new eyes. The town meeting victory had not only secured Luna's place in the community, but it also strengthened Sarah's own position as both teacher and mother. Luna had blossomed during the winter months following the meeting. Her English had improved dramatically, and she was now reading at the same level as children 2 years older. She had also begun showing remarkable artistic talent, creating detailed drawings of plants and animals that impressed everyone who saw them. Sarah encouraged this gift, providing Luna with better paper and colored pencils when she could afford them. James Parker had become an even more frequent visitor to their lives. He often joined them for Sunday dinners at Mrs. Wilson's hotel. He had started teaching Luna to ride a gentle horse he owned. Sarah found herself looking forward to these times together, and she couldn't ignore the growing warmth she felt whenever James was near. One afternoon in late April, as Sarah was cleaning the schoolhouse after dismissing the children, James appeared in the doorway with an unusual expression on his face. Luna was outside gathering wildflowers to decorate the classroom, so they were alone. "Sarah, I need to tell you something important," he said, removing his hat and turning it nervously in his hands. "I've been doing some thinking over the winter. I can't keep these feelings to myself any longer." Sarah's heart began to beat faster. She had sensed something changing between them, but she hadn't been sure if she was imagining it. "What feelings, James?" He took a deep breath. "I'm in love with you, Sarah. I have been for months now, probably since the day I first met you at the train station. I know this might complicate things, and I know you came here planning to marry someone else. But I had to tell you how I feel." Sarah set down her broom, her hands trembling slightly. "James, let me finish," he said gently. "I love Luna too. She's like the daughter I never thought I'd have. If you could ever care for me the way I care for you, I'd want us to be a real family. I'd want to adopt Luna officially and give her my name. I'd want to give you both everything I have." Sarah felt tears welling up in her eyes. "I do care for you, James, more than I ever expected to care for anyone. But are you sure you understand what you're asking? Marrying me means taking on a half Indian daughter. Some people will never accept that." James stepped closer to her. "Sarah, I've watched you fight for Luna's place in this community. I've seen your courage and your love. If people can't accept our family as it is, then they're not people whose opinions I value." He reached out and gently touched her face. "I love you both exactly as you are." Sarah closed her eyes and leaned into his touch. "I love you too, James. I think I have for a long time. But I was afraid to admit it." When Luna came running back into the schoolhouse with her arms full of wildflowers, she found Sarah and James holding hands and smiling at each other with tears on their faces. "Mama, what's wrong? Are you sad?" Luna asked with concern. "No, sweetheart," Sarah said, kneeling down to Luna's level. "These are happy tears. James has asked me to marry him, and I said yes. That means we would all be a real family together." Luna's eyes grew wide with excitement. "Really? James would be my papa?" She looked at James with hopeful eyes. "Would you really want to be my papa?" James knelt down beside Sarah and took Luna's small hands in his. "Luna, I would be honored to be your papa. I love you and your mama very much. I want us to be together always." Luna dropped her wildflowers and threw her arms around James's neck. "Yes, I want you to be my papa. I want us to be a family." The wedding was planned for early June, giving Sarah time to make arrangements and allowing the community to adjust to the idea. Most people in Cedar Creek were genuinely happy for the couple. James Parker was well respected in the area, known for his honesty and hard work. His acceptance of Luna helped convince even some of the doubters that perhaps they had been too quick to judge. Mrs. Wilson insisted on helping with the wedding preparations, treating Sarah like the daughter she had never had. The other women in town contributed food for the reception, and even some of those who had initially opposed Luna's staying began to warm to the idea of the unusual family. As the wedding approached, Sarah received an unexpected visitor. Thomas Henderson, the man who had originally arranged for her to come to Cedar Creek as a mail-order bride, returned to town. He appeared at the schoolhouse one afternoon, looking dusty and travel-worn. "Miss Mitchell," he said awkwardly, removing his hat. "I heard you were still in town. I wanted to apologize for the way I left. It wasn't right to abandon you like that." Sarah looked at him with curiosity rather than anger. He seemed smaller and less impressive than she had imagined during their correspondence. "Mr. Henderson, that's very kind of you to come back and apologize. I won't pretend it wasn't difficult at the time, but I understand that marriage is a big commitment. I heard you're marrying James Parker," Thomas continued, "and that you have a daughter now. I'm glad things worked out well for you." "They have," Sarah replied. "Better than I ever could have imagined when I first stepped off that train." Thomas shifted uncomfortably. "The truth is, Miss Mitchell, I came back because I've been thinking about you all winter. I wondered if maybe we could start over, give our original plan a chance." Sarah was quiet for a moment, then smiled gently. "Mr. Henderson, I appreciate your honesty, but I'm very happy with my life as it is. James is a wonderful man who loves both Luna and me. I wouldn't change anything about how things turned out." Thomas nodded, though he looked disappointed. "I figured as much, but I had to try. James Parker is a good man. You made the right choice after he left." Sarah reflected on how different her life might have been if Thomas had kept his original commitment. She realized that she felt nothing but gratitude that he had changed his mind. His abandonment had led her to something much better than she had originally sought. The wedding day dawned clear and beautiful, with the mountains standing majestically against a bright blue sky. Sarah wore a simple but elegant white dress that Mrs. Wilson had helped her sew, and Luna wore a matching dress in pale yellow. James had purchased a new suit for the occasion and looked more handsome than Sarah had ever seen him. The ceremony took place in the church, with Pastor Williams officiating. Nearly the entire town attended, including many who had initially opposed Luna's presence in the community. As Sarah walked down the aisle, she saw faces filled with genuine happiness for her and James. Luna stood beside Sarah during the ceremony, holding a small bouquet of wildflowers. When Pastor Williams asked if anyone objected to the union, Luna's clear young voice rang out, "I object if Papa James doesn't promise to love me and Mama forever." The church erupted in laughter, and James knelt down to Luna's level. "I promise to love you and your Mama forever and always. Luna, you have my word." "Then it's okay," Luna announced solemnly, and the ceremony continued amid chuckles from the congregation. After the wedding, there was a reception in the church hall with food, music, and dancing. Sarah watched with joy as Luna danced with her new father, both of them laughing and spinning around the floor. The other children surrounded them, and even some of the adults who had once been skeptical were smiling at the sight. As the evening wound down, James and Sarah found themselves standing on the porch of their new home, a small house James had purchased on the edge of town. Luna had fallen asleep in James's arms, exhausted from all the excitement. "Are you happy, Mrs. Parker?" James asked softly, using Sarah's new married name. Sarah looked at her sleeping daughter and then at her husband's kind face in the moonlight. "Happier than I ever thought possible," she whispered. "When I got on that train in Denver, I thought I was going to a marriage of convenience. Instead, I found a real family and true love." James shifted Luna gently so he could put his arm around Sarah. "Sometimes the best things in life come when we least expect them," he said. "I never thought I'd have a wife and daughter. And now, I can't imagine life without you both." As they stood there together, under the stars, Sarah thought about the strange journey that had brought them to this moment. A mail-order bride arrangement that had gone wrong. A lost child who needed love, and a community that had learned to open their hearts to something different. It had all combined to create something beautiful and unexpected. 5 years had passed since Sarah first arrived in Cedar Creek as a misdelivered mail-order bride. The small frontier town had grown and prospered, with new businesses opening and more families settling in the area. The schoolhouse had been expanded twice to accommodate the growing number of children, and Sarah had gained a reputation as one of the finest teachers in the territory. Luna, now 10 years old, had become a remarkable young girl who impressed everyone who met her. She spoke perfect English, but had also learned some Spanish from the Mexican families who had moved to the area. And she still remembered bits of her native Ute language. Her artistic talents had developed tremendously, and her drawings and paintings decorated not only the schoolhouse, but several homes and businesses in town. James had built their family a larger house with a proper studio space for Luna's artwork and a library where Sarah could prepare her lessons. The house also had a large garden where Luna grew vegetables and flowers, showing the same natural talent for cultivation that she displayed in her art. The Parker family had become pillars of the Cedar Creek community. James served on the town council, Sarah had been elected to the school board, and Luna had won several regional academic competitions. More importantly, they had become the kind of family that opened their doors to anyone in need. Over the years, they had quietly helped several other children who found themselves alone or in difficult circumstances. There was Miguel Santos, whose parents had died in a mining accident, and Mary O'Brien, whose widowed mother couldn't care for her during a long illness. The Parker house had become known as a place where troubled children could find safety and love. On this particular autumn morning, Sarah was teaching her advanced students when she noticed unusual activity on the main street. Through the schoolhouse windows, she could see people gathering and pointing toward the mountains. She excused herself and stepped outside to investigate. A large group of riders was approaching the town, and as they came closer, Sarah could see they were Native Americans, members of the Ute tribe. Her heart began to race as she wondered if this had anything to do with Luna. The child was now in the schoolhouse, helping younger students with their reading, completely unaware of what was happening outside. James appeared at Sarah's side, having left his work at the livery stable when he heard the commotion. "Don't worry," he said quietly, taking her hand. "Whatever this is about, we'll face it together." The group of riders stopped in the center of town, and their leader, an elderly man with gray braids and traditional clothing, dismounted slowly. Mayor Harrison approached them with several other town officials, and Sarah could see they were having a respectful but serious conversation. After a few minutes, James squeezed Sarah's hand. "I'm going to find out what's happening. Stay here with the children." Sarah watched anxiously as James joined the group of men talking with the Ute leader. The conversation seemed to go on forever, though it was probably only a few minutes. Finally, James returned, his expression unreadable. "They're looking for Luna," he said quietly. "The old man is her great-uncle, brother to her grandmother who died last winter. He's come to see her and to talk with us." Sarah's knees felt weak. "Do they want to take her away?" "I don't know," James admitted. "But we need to trust that whatever happens, we'll handle it the right way. Luna is our daughter, legally and in every way that matters. But she also has a right to know about her heritage and her family." They decided to dismiss school early and invite Luna's great-uncle, who was called Grey Wolf, to their home. Sarah explained to Luna what was happening, and the girl listened with wide eyes but showed no fear. Over the years, she had grown confident and secure in her family's love. Grey Wolf arrived at their house accompanied by a younger man who served as interpreter. though it quickly became apparent that Grey Wolf understood English quite well. He was dignified and courteous, accepting the coffee Sarah offered and complimenting her on her home. "I've come far to see the child of my sister's daughter," Grey Wolf said in careful English. "For many moons, I have wondered what became of little Luna after the sickness took so many of our people." Luna sat quietly beside Sarah on the sofa, sighting her great-uncle's weathered face. "I remember you," she said finally. "You gave me a wooden horse when I was very little." Grey Wolf's stern expression softened. "You have a good memory, child." "Yes, I carved that horse for you." He looked around the comfortable parlor, taking in Luna's artwork on the walls and the books everywhere. "You have been well cared for here. Mama Sarah and Papa James love me very much," Luna said simply. "They taught me to read and write and draw. I'm going to be a teacher like Mama Sarah when I grow up." "That is good," Grey Wolf nodded approvingly. "Education is important in the white man's world. Your grandmother would be proud to know you are learning these things." Sarah found her voice. "Mr. Grey Wolf, we want you to know that we've tried to teach Luna about her heritage too. We've told her stories about her people and encouraged her to remember her native language. We never wanted her to forget where she came from." "I can see this," Grey Wolf replied. "The child is healthy and happy. She carries herself with pride. You have done well by her." He paused, then continued. "I did not come to take her away. I came to see for myself that she was safe and to give her something that belonged to her." Mother Grey Wolf reached into a leather pouch and withdrew a beautiful silver necklace with a pendant shaped like a crescent moon. "This was your mother's," he said to Luna. "Her mother gave it to her, and her mother's mother before that. It should be yours now." Luna accepted the necklace reverently, running her fingers over the intricate silver work. "It's beautiful," she whispered. "Thank you for bringing it to me. There is more," Grey Wolf continued. "I want you to know that you have family among our people still. When you are older, if you wish to visit us and learn more about your heritage, you will always be welcome. But I can see that your heart is here with these good people who have raised you." Sarah felt tears of relief and gratitude streaming down her face. "You're welcome to visit Luna any time you're in this area," she managed to say. She should know her family. Grey Wolf stayed in Cedar Creek for 3 days, during which time he told Luna stories about her mother and grandmother, taught her traditional songs, and showed her how to weave grass into baskets. The townspeople, who had been nervous about the presence of the Ute group at first, gradually relaxed as they saw the peaceful nature of the visit. On his last evening in town, Grey Wolf addressed a gathering in the church. "I came here expecting to find a lost child who needed to be rescued," he said through his interpreter. "Instead, I found a young woman who has been given every opportunity to succeed in life while still being taught to honor her ancestors. The white family who has raised her has loved her as their own, while respecting her true heritage." After Grey Wolf and his group left, Luna wore her mother's necklace every day. She began incorporating traditional Ute designs into her artwork and asked Sarah to help her research more about Native American history and culture. The experience had enriched her sense of identity rather than confused it. As winter approached, Sarah often found herself reflecting on the incredible journey that had brought her family to this point. What had begun as a practical arrangement for a mail-order marriage had become something far more meaningful, a story of love overcoming prejudice, of community learning to embrace differences, and of a family created not by blood, but by choice and devotion. One evening, as they sat by the fire with Luna working on a drawing and James reading, Sarah spoke what was in her heart. "Sometimes I think about what would have happened if Thomas Henderson hadn't changed his mind about marrying me." James looked up from his book. "Do you ever regret how things turned out?" Sarah looked at her daughter, bent over her artwork with intense concentration, then at her husband's kind, familiar face. "Never," she said firmly. "That train may have delivered me to the wrong man, but it brought me to exactly the right life." Luna looked up from her drawing, which showed a family of 3 standing together under a starry sky. "Mama, do you think it was really the wrong man? Or do you think maybe it was always supposed to be this way?" Sarah smiled at her wise young daughter. "You know what, Luna? I think you might be right." Sometimes the best things in life come to us in the most unexpected ways. Outside, snow began to fall gently on Cedar Creek, covering the small town in a blanket of pristine white. Inside the Parker home, three people who had found each other through circumstances they never could have planned settled in for another peaceful evening together, grateful for the love that had grown from the most unlikely beginnings.